Welcome back to Occult Perspectives. The last video I did, I was having a little bit of fun and started talking about The Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. I was having a lot of fun with that, so I'm just going to continue doing that. We're going to leave off, start from where we left off in part 1. We were talking about the character, I believe it's pronounced Kapora Gabora. But he is the owl. And we were talking about the symbolism of the owl. The owl, since ancient times, it's always been a symbol of wisdom. There's an evil side to it too. There's the god, I believe it's a Canaanite god or a Babylonian god, Moloch. And people would sacrifice their children to him. So he's a really dark figure. But this Kapora Gabora, as we find out later in the game, as we said in the last video, is the sage Ra-Ru. And Ra-Ru's a good guy. So the owl's really representing the benevolent aspect of the owl. And I don't believe I went over this little passage from last time. This is just a little note on Ra-Ru. In ancient times, Ra-Ru built the Temple of Time, symbolic of Kronos, Father Time. Afterwards, he remained within the Temple of Light, only leaving the sacred realm as his owl form. According to one of the gossip stones in the game, and the gossip stones, they're supposed to give you like little hints and stuff. If you use, I think it's the Mask of Truth. I believe that's what it's called. It's the mask with the eye on it. You can communicate with the stones. But it says, anyway, according to the gossip stone, he is rumored to be the reincarnation of an ancient sage. Yep, so there we have it. The owl's connected with Ra-Ru. Ra-Ru is the sage, and the owl would be like the physical incarnation of him whenever he travels into Hyrule. So moving on. So Link leaves the forest, Kokiri Forest. He's in Hyrule Field. He talks to the owl. And basically there's a lot of places you can go in the map at that point in the game. But your objective is basically to go to Hyrule Castle, because you need to talk to Princess Zelda. This is a side note. I thought this was interesting. You learn more about this character later on in the game. When Ganondorf ends up changing the world into evil, one of the Night Guard, he's a Night Watch guard, but he becomes the guy who buys like the big pose from you later on in the game when Ganondorf takes over. But this guy, he's just like a guard, you know, in Hyrule Castle at the time. But he says, hey, I'm really interested in ghosts. Studying them is a hobby of mine, but you never know. The time may come when that kind of knowledge might be useful. So he already is kind of into occult knowledge he's referencing here. He's into paranormal. He's into the ghosts. And he's, you know, foreshadowing later in the game, you know, even if you haven't played the game, he's hinting, you know, that later on in the game, the world basically becomes turned evil. Ganondorf, you know, changes everything. Oh, I added a note here too. When you go to the Hyrule, you have to sneak your way through the guards and everything, but the gate that's right there, there's a phoenix on there. And of course, you know, the phoenix is a reoccurring symbol throughout video games, movies, you know, esoterica stuff, you know, everywhere, whatever. The symbol of, you know, resurrection. And, you know, even if you've been burned to ashes, you can rise again. And the Scorpio has a threefold. In that zodiac, there's a threefold transformation. It starts out with the scorpion, with the stinger. You know, a lot of us, you know, we sting or bite, you know, when we get cornered. But if we can overcome that lower nature of ourselves, we become the serpent, which is wise. But the final stage of a Scorpio is the phoenix that rises from the ashes, totally transformed and renewed. On the way to the princess as well, the guards are very geometric in their moving. I want to make mention here, I think it's Mecca over, I'm not sure, I don't know this topic well enough to really, I'm no expert on it, but I know that over in the Middle East somewhere, there's like, I think what's called Mecca and the giant black cube, and they circumambulate around that. And they circumambulate around it in a counterclockwise fashion, which I think the guards in this game, they're moving around the shapes kind of in a clockwise direction for the most part. Sometimes it's just one guard going around the perimeter, and then sometimes it's two, but I just thought it was interesting. It's that same theme, you know, that you see in Mecca, all these guys, you know, moving around this big square, and the big square is symbolic of Father Time, as far as I understand, or the god of the Old Testament, sometimes referred to as Saturn or Kronos. It's a harsher, more warlike god than, you know, what we see in the New Testament. The Jesus, it's all loving and peace and kindness, and kind of the dualities of the Old Testament and the New Testament. So yeah, if you played the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you've been through any kind of initiation ceremony of any kind, you would know what I'm talking about too, what I'm making reference to in this part of the game. So yeah, there's like this maze of guards that you have to basically sneak around, and a couple of the spots are squares and then others are rectangles, and then you make your way to Zelda. And she asks if you have the green spiritual stone. She had a dream. Dark storm clouds were billowing over the land of Hyrule, but suddenly a ray of light shot out of the forest, parted the clouds, and lit up the ground. The light turned into a figure holding a green and shining stone, followed by a fairy. Due to her prophecy, she knew that someone would come. The resting place of the Triforce, we already went over like the Kokiri stone in the last video, and the magical properties of some stones. It's the stone of the forest, it's the stone of the earth. You got it from the Great Deku Tree. She tells you about the sacred realm, that the secret of the sacred realm that has been passed down by the royal family of Hyrule, and then she'll ask if you can keep this secret from everyone. You don't really have the option to say no at this point, which is kind of funny. Like, if you tell her no, she's like, come on, don't be a blabbermouth, blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of a little funny side note there. Zelda mentions that your name sounds familiar. And what's interesting here is, I made a side note as well, again, the main characters of the Zelda games, the Zelda series, it's always Link and Zelda, but it's not always the same Link and Zelda. It's the same Link in like the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, but then when you go to like A Link to the Past, like that's a different Link and a different Zelda, so it's in a different timeline. So they're reincarnating at different points in Hyrule's history. I'm assuming that's what's going on here, like they're a twin flame kind of thing. So Zelda mentions your name sounds familiar, so maybe not only from the dream, but maybe a past life thing from being other, you know, Zeldas and stuff. I think chronologically, if you're following the Zelda games, the Skyward Sword is the first game chronologically. And if you're not familiar with the Zelda series, Skyward Sword's actually like way later in the game series. And then the first Legend of Zelda that was on the NES, I think that's actually later on in the timeline. That's something we could get into future videos as well, is just more of the lore of Zelda, because I don't have them up here on my bookshelf, but I've actually got some hardback books of Zelda with some pretty cool lore and extra stuff in it. Okay. She goes on, if someone with a righteous heart, once you get to, like, you go in the sacred realm, if someone gains access to that, and they basically, as far as I understand it, the reason that Ganondorf, when he fails, when he goes into the sacred realm, basically the pieces of the Triforce, they all split and go to different people, and he's only allowed the Triforce of Power because we'll have to get into the details of that, because that's kind of a confusing part of the game. Not really, but they don't show Ganondorf actually going into the sacred realm. He's just kind of like, ha ha ha, you've been sealed away for 7 years, like sleeping, which we'll get into in later videos, because I'm gonna have to do that. We'll probably only get through like maybe up until Link gets to an adult in this video. And by adult, I mean 17 years old, because he's 10 years old when he's a kid. But when he pulls the Master Sword out of the stone, he becomes 17, I believe, because 7 years pass in between. But Zelda's explaining, if someone with a righteous heart makes a wish, it will lead Hyrule to a golden age of prosperity. If someone with an evil mind or an evil will, it will consume the world. Sounds like my cat is meowing. Is it trying to get? Yeah, the dog is tormenting him, as usual. Little dogs they don't know when to leave cats alone. Cats are really slick, intelligent beings. They're very aware. They're very intuitive. They're very conscious. The dogs, on the other hand, while they're sweet and loyal, they're just not on that same psychic level as the cats. Sorry to say. Yeah, if someone with an evil mind or evil will were to use, full power of the Triforce, it would basically consume the world, which is what happens when Ganondorf, basically takes over the world. Yeah, I'm going to keep going over the story on this paper, and then we can actually go through. I've got the video pulled up on the computer back there. I forgot to put on some tones this time. That's all right. Okay, the goddesses. And we went over the legend that she talks about, which is the Legend of Zelda, of course, that she's talking about here and talking about the 3 golden goddesses. A lot of that was explained by the Deku Tree in the first part of the game, so she's kind of like repeating a lot of this stuff, but we're going to go over it again anyway, just as I kind of have it written down here, and then we'll go through the video too. The goddesses hid the Triforce containing the power of the gods somewhere in Hyrule. The power to grant the wish of the one who holds the Triforce in his hands. Okay, yeah, I'd written the note to go actually here at this part. The ancient sages built the Temple of Time, and if someone with a righteous heart made the wish, it would lead Hyrule into a golden age of prosperity. Someone with an evil mind, it consumes the world. We see this theme in other Zelda games as well, with Ganondorf, or Ganon, as his more bestial or carnal form. That would be more like, wow, this is actually something I'd never put together before until now. My brain, I love when I get little synchronicities and epiphanies like this. So Ganon, and I'm sorry that I keep going to, way later in the game if you haven't played the game, but I'm going to have to just use references later on in the game to explain some of the details here. But Ganon, no, I don't have I actually have an Ocarina of Time comic book around here somewhere, but anyway, what I was getting to, Ganon the Beast, he represents, I guess it would be more like the Satan form of the devil, as in the beast, more like the beast 666 type energy, or the carnality, whereas if we're thinking more Lucifer or fallen angel, or more, I call it like a cleaner type evil. It's not so like vicious and bloody and blah, 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 blah. Like Lucifer, if we're talking about the dark evil aspects of that archetype, and I'm not coming from the perspective right now of a being, I don't even want to get into that. I'm just talking about the archetype of that duality itself, the Luciferian complex. Ganondorf would represent more that Lucifer, while Ganon would be more the devil, or Satan as we see it, like that thing with the horns, like the goat or whatever. It's always symbolized by like an animal type form, and I think that's really maybe what they were kind of trying to shoot for with the symbology between Ganondorf and Ganon. Ganondorf's this clean-cut like sorcerer dude, like it's much more, like, I don't know, just throwing some thoughts out there for those of you who have studied more, deeper into the character of Lucifer and the different shadow aspects or archetypes of darkness or of the devil, trying to, understand, it's like defense against the dark arts. A lot of people say just stay away from that stuff. I don't say practice any of that stuff. I just say study it, like look into it, and then examine your own mind, and where the darkness in your own mind, you can learn a lot and reflect on your own darkness, and then come to kind of reconcile things in your own mind. But anyway, getting back to things. They wanted to protect the Triforce because they knew that, anyone who reached it could basically make their wish. Unworthy wish. To avoid anyone making an unworthy wish, the Temple of Time is the entrance through which one can enter the sacred realm from our world, so from Hyrule. The entrance is sealed with a stone wall called the Door of Time, and to open the door you need the 3 spiritual stones, and you already have one of these, the Kokiri's Emerald, and the treasure of the royal family, which is the Ocarina of Time, which is an instrument, a fancier version of the ocarina that Sarah gave you in the beginning of the game. As Zelda was dreaming in dark clouds, they symbolize Ganondorf, or just evil and shadow in general, Man with evil eyes, he's the leader of the Gerudo. And a Gerudo, that race, it says they hail from the desert far to the west. There's some symbolism here because the sun sets in the west. It's an all-female tribe. So the Gerudo, it's all women, but one male is somehow born every 100 years. I don't really know how that works, but must be some interesting sex magic stuff going on in that cult, I would say. He swears allegiance to the king. Zelda says that Ganondorf has sworn allegiance to the king, but he has unsincere desires. Zelda's intuition senses that Ganondorf has bad intentions. Her father ignores her worries. And just a side note, typically, not trying to be sexist or anything, but typically women have better intuitive skills. That's just, some women are not going to have that as much. Some men that are more in tune with their female energy, and I'm talking archetypal energy, not like sexual or just physical. At the core, right brain, left brain type stuff. It's just, where was I going with that? Totally lost track of what I was thinking. Oh, just the better sense of intuition overall, on average, like women tend to naturally have that power a little bit better because they're more right-brained, generally speaking, not all the time. There are always exceptions. So I'm not trying to tell you how it is. I'm just showing you what my observations and my occult perspectives are. Okay. Her father ignores her worries, and she knows that Ganondorf is after the Triforce of the Sacred Realm, that he wants to conquer Hyrule. No, actually, the entire world. She says you are the only one who can protect Hyrule. She's talking about Link at this point, because he, links everything together. The Sheikah is the caretaker of Zelda, and the Sheikahs, which is like the race, I think that's what they're called. They look over the royal family. She knows Zelda's prophecies are sincere. So she would kind of be like, I guess, in like the Lord of the Rings, you have Frodo, and in the Lord of the Rings, and then in the Hobbit you have Bilbo Baggins, but there's always the wizard, Gandalf there to help protect and watch over. And I think Impa would be, I think that's her name, and she's the Sheikah. I believe I'm getting that right. Or maybe her name's Sheikah. Maybe I wrote that down wrong. I don't know why I can't remember her name. But she's always the caretaker of Zelda in like a lot of the Zelda games. You'll find that as a common theme throughout. The Zelda's Lullaby that you learn here, it helps to prove your connection in future circumstances that you have with a royal family. So it's like proof that you have a connection with the princess, and not so much the princess, but just the family in general to some degree, which you use later on, a lot in the game. Zelda's Lullaby is an ancient melody passed down by the royal family. There's mysterious power in these notes. Yeah, I've got some notes here. I already was explaining the Sheikah stones and how you can read them with the mask. They can hold a lot of ancient knowledge due to the Sheikah being a more ancient race. I'm not sure where. Okay, so these notes. Okay, that's after this part of the game. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip through this. We're just gonna kind of quickly review. Did the computer totally turn off on me? I suppose it did. There we go. Okay. Okay, this is the part where Link's leaving the forest and everything. Okay, yeah, you can see that. I think you can read the writing too. My hand might be in the way there. So then after that, you go all the way across Hyrule Field, which is not shown here because this is just the cutscenes in the game. You go all the way to where you're talking to Zelda, which is that whole part that I basically just explained. How did you get past the guards? Oh, what's that? Is that a fairy? Okay. So yeah, she realizes that you have the stone. You're the one that was in her dream. Basically everything we covered before. This is the creation story once again. You know, the three goddesses. I hid the Triforce containing the power of the gods somewhere in Hyrule. The power to grant the wish of the one who holds the Triforce in his hands. I was thinking the resting place, or the hiding place, was the sacred realm. If someone with a righteous heart makes a wish, it will lead Hyrule to a golden age of prosperity. So that's basically, yeah, what I was trying to remember before is the door of time in the Temple of Time is the portal, basically, that leads to the sacred realm. And then that's where Ganondorf got a hold of the Triforce. But because his heart was not pure, yeah, it splits off, which we'll learn later in the game. Is there anything super important here? Not sure. You spy through the window at him. Yeah, there's Ganondorf. You can see him there. There he swears allegiance to my father. I'm sure he's not sincere. We went over that. This is where you meet. Okay, her name is Impa, and the race is the Sheikah. The Sheikahs. I'm responsible for protecting Princess Zelda. Everything is exactly as she foretold, as we said before. And she helps you out later on in the game, too. She ends up being one of the sages. That's where you learn Zelda's lullaby. Gotta love that first song. It's so high-pitched. It's a laptop speaker. Let's see. And then she tells you that you basically got to go to Death Mountain, and that is where you go to get the second spiritual stone. Yep. And you go on. You talk to Sarah in the... I guess that would be... It is the Sacred Meadow part, because that's right before you get to the Forest Temple. The entrance to the Forest Temple is like right above there. We're at 23 minutes. Try not to go too much longer, but we'll see how this goes. Okay, you've made it to the Sacred Forest Meadow. It's a place where few people have ever really come to. It's a sacred, private place for her. The owl, you run into him again. He says if you are courageous, you will make it through the forest just fine. She goes on to say, this is Sarah. It is my secret place. I feel that one day this place will be important for both of us, which she's foreshadowing, of course, when she becomes a sage, the sage of the forest, and ends up helping you get into the Forest Temple. Sarah mentions being able to talk to the spirits by playing with the Ocarina. I thought that was a little interesting esoteric note. Sorry, I'm not really... This video, I guess this part of the game, because the reason I really wanted to cover Zelda is not just to cover the story of Zelda, which I seem like I'm doing a lot of, but I wanted to take like a lot of the themes from Zelda and show you how esoteric this game really is. The only other video game series I can think of that's any more like occult or esoteric is definitely like the Elder Scrolls games. Those games are masterfully written. I mean, they've just got Masonic, ritual, magic, you know, every esoteric thing you could think of written all over it. Just every, really, in my opinion, influences from every secret society, every knighthood, all that stuff, just medieval, everything, like all rolled into one cool ball. One really cool story. I think they could do a lot more personally with the Elder Scrolls series. I don't like the Elder Scrolls Online. I think they should be making more one-player games like the other Elder Scrolls, and just be focusing more on that. But that's just my personal side note and opinion there. The song allows you to talk with Sarah as well. It's when you play Sarah's song, it's like basically like a telephone, call. You channel, a message to her. Okay, the temple, the little paths that are outside of each of the temples, like the forest temple, the fire temple, and the water temple, as you learn later on in the game, are for the teleportation. Once you learn how to teleport, and that's pretty cool. It's a triangle within the Triforce too, so there's some interesting geometry going on. I think it's like a upside down Triforce, and then like a Triforce within that. Trying to remember exactly, but you could easily look that up. Actually, is it in this video on the ground right there? Is it not going to show me? Maybe it will show me. We'll see. If I can get you a visual. I don't want to spend too much time on. Let's see. Yeah, so you've got, I can barely see it. I don't know if you can check it out there or not, but it's like the triangle is going up, but then there's a downward pointing triangle, and then there's a circle within it. And that's not just Zelda games. You see alchemical signs and stuff like everywhere. They're in movies. Just start looking, and you'll see. It's everywhere. Once you start understanding this knowledge, you see everything in a much different light. It's the same pattern, I believe, of the sages' medallions as well. Each of those paths on the ground that you teleport onto. I guess this is as you're leaving the forest, maybe the owl discusses the mysterious power of the songs you can learn, the power of music. We all know music's a very powerful thing. It's one of the 7 liberal arts and sciences. If you're a Mason, particularly, study music. If you want to learn more about the divine and learn more about God and things of that nature, the study of music itself, it's the Fibonacci sequence, it's all sacred geometry, it's all learning about us, which is the creation of ultimate source experiencing itself here on the physical plane. The Sheikah opened Kakariko village to the public. I don't know why I put a question mark there. I guess they were the ones who ended up opening the village in the first place, which makes sense because Impa comes from that village. You need permission to ascend the mountain, which Zelda ends up giving you a letter after she talks to you there that allows you, gives you some authority. The guard ends up letting you through if you get him a mask, I believe, for his son. Impa hired carpenters to make it into a real city. Kakariko, the young men have no ambition. The main carpenter says he's trying to, basically all these guys are like bums, I guess, just sitting around, not working. But, I don't know. It's, they're just trying to create, a comedic effect in the game there, I guess. You got the old man, all the kids are so lazy and don't want to work. But, it's just work is such a subjective term because there's so many different kinds of work. I've talked about that before, mostly on my Facebook videos, not so much on this channel, but the real work is the great work, which is the lifting of human consciousness and creating heaven on earth, into a more harmonious vibrational state, here on this planet, so we can experience true peace, harmony, and bliss, like never before, really, or maybe way, 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 way before, but we're just bringing it back this time. We're bringing it back, for sure. It is manifested, and so it is. One clap opens the gate after you show the pass to the guy. That's interesting. I think he's got his little rod there, and he slaps it down on the ground. It opens the gate. Zelda's Lullaby. opens the door to Daruna. Daruna expected a messenger, but you're just a little kid. When he heard Zelda's lullaby, he was thinking somebody from the royal family would be around. He's the big boss of the Gorons. I don't know what I'm writing in my notes here. But Daruna's kind of, he's really hard-headed. But if you end up playing Sarah's song to him, he ends up dancing around. He says, what a hot beat. He's relaxed for once in his life. And he says, just like that, my depression is all gone. Suddenly he wanted to dance like crazy. And I could make a mention to energy here. A lot of people, they work so hard all the time. It's work constantly. A lot of pent-up energy. A lot of people don't realize how much pent-up energy they have. And a lot of people go and waste it, right away. They'll just go drink it off or party it off or whatever. It's fun to party once in a while. But if you're just draining your vital energy and, all the time, it's no good. You need to hold on to that. And just connect with the divine, because you've always got the connection, to source. We just are in inharmonious and discordant environments a lot of the time, so we're not able to adjust and make that connection as quick as we could. But yeah, this is an example here. Daruna dancing around. He's been so mad and had so much pent-up energy for so long. He's just ready to dance and get it all out. Sometimes you just got to dance it out. Sometimes it feels really, really good to just dance things away. But you also don't want to run away from things either. There's a way. The best way to heal is to just really, I think, work it out. You don't want to run away from it. You want to process it. I think song and dance are two of the most, the healthiest ways to cope with things like that. But anyway, guys, it's getting pretty late. This video is going into 32 minutes now. These videos take a while to upload when I'm done with them. I don't know if it's like my phone or the connection, or it's just YouTube or whatever. It usually takes me at least 2 hours, if not more, sometimes 3 or 4 hours to post a long video, particularly like this one. But yeah, it's getting late. Worked an 8-hour shift today, and then did some meditation, and decided to do a late night video. I typically do these in the morning or early afternoon when I have a little more energy, but felt the need to jump on here and go ahead and do one because I hadn't done one for a few days. I like doing them. I even like to watch back because I learn from myself. I learn from watching others. We're all just here on this giant, awesome school called Earth. And remember, it's not the world that sucks. It's it's perceptions of people that suck, and we can easily have heaven on earth. It's not something that's really that hard. We got this. It's easy. Children of the Aeon of Horus, this is our time to shine. All you light beings, all you light workers, all you star seeds, initiates, from all the different mystery schools and all the different traditions. It's time for all of us to come together and bring peace and light. I love you all. Please like my videos. Please subscribe. I think we're at 36 or 37 subscribers now, so I'm loving it. Please comment. Peace. Take care.